Okay, we're going to make an animation in JavaScript which is going to be viewed in a web browser. To do this, we're going to need three files. We're going to need a web page, a .html file. We're going to need a style sheet, a .css file, and we're going to need a JavaScript code file. So before I get too involved, this series is going to be several different versions of particles. We're going to make them bounce around the screen, and we're going to make them bounce off one another. You'll be doing a little bit of editing and changing things yourself to experiment and see what happens. So let's make a start with, first of all, the web page, and we've created web pages before from templates, so you might have a template that you want to begin with. I'm just going to type it out from scratch. You might want to follow along as I'm typing it out. So that's my web page, HTML, end HTML, and I'm going to save this, and I'm going to save it in a folder called particles. There we go. You need to save all of your files in the same folder. I suggest you call it particles as well. That would be helpful. And this file is going to be called index.html. Don't give it any other name. Call it index.html. That's the best name we could do. It means homepage for a web page. So there we go. I've saved it, and now I've got my colors, which are going to help me write my program. So remember, we have two sections to a web page. We have the head at the top, and then we have the body of the web page. And we're not actually going to be writing much code in these files. We're really going to be concentrating on the JavaScript file. So once these are written, that'll be it. We'll just forget about them. We can close them down and not look at them again. So in the head, I want a title which, if you remember, appears at the top where we've got a new tab here. It will appear on the tab. I'm going to call this one Particles. I'm choosing the word particles rather than balls, bouncing balls or anything, because really what we're doing can be sort of extended to things like smoke particles and all sorts of planets. Anything that's round basically is going to be a particle. It's very sciencey. And the next thing I'm going to do is have a style sheet, and I'm going to link to it. So I'm going to type my link now and write the style sheet in a minute. So the rel is a style sheet, and the type is going to be a text stroke CSS. You should have done all of this before. And the href, or the link to the actual page, whoops, seem to have made a mistake there. The href, which is the link to the actual style sheet page, we're just going to put the name styles.css. So that's what we need to call our style file, styles.css. If we call it something different, it's not going to work, or you're going to have to change the name here. So that's the link and the title. Really all I need to do now is set up a very special element called a canvas. If we're going to draw things on a web page, we need to have a canvas. And I've got a start and end canvas. It's the only way we can draw. On web pages, we're very limited what we can do. We can put pictures on, or we put text on, but we can't make things sort of move. We need to do that on a canvas. And beneath this, we are going to link to our source file, our code. Let's call it code.js, our JavaScript code, which will contain all the instructions to make our particles move on the screen. So that's that one, and then just end the script, and hopefully I won't be making any mistakes. If I do, like I have done there, I'll correct them, and they'll be useful even if I make mistakes, which I tend to do a lot. It's nice to see how they're fixed and the methods that are used. So hopefully I'll make a few so you can see them, but I'm going to try not to. So there's my first file. So that's saved. Now I need a new file. I'm going to do my style sheet. Now before, we've done a lot of work on style sheets, and this one is going to be really simple. Just going to style the body. Okay, and all I'm going to do is set the margins of the body to be no pixels wide, 0 pixels. That's it. So I'm going to save that now into my folder, my particles folder, and I'm going to name it exactly the same that I called it in my web page, so styles.css. So I've got 2 of my 3 files, and really that's it. I could shut these down and not use them again. I'm going to keep them open for the time being, but we're not going to add to these at all. We're only going to play in a code file. So let's do that. Let's start a new file. Let's save it pretty much straight away. And this is going to be my JavaScript. This is what's going to make the ball or the particle appear and move. I'm not really going to explain too much about what it does. I just expect you to type the details in and maybe learn 1 or 2 things or see 1 or 2 things that you might be able to change yourself. So let's start. The first thing I need to do is link to the canvas that is on my web page. So var canvas equals document dot query selector. Now make sure that you are using the correct case. Don't forget we're using something called camel case. So I've got 2 words here, query and selector. The second one always starts with a capital S to help you. If you don't do that, it is not going to work. And then I'm going to link to the canvas. And JavaScript finishes, or each line finishes with a semicolon. Now you can leave these out and it will still work, but really we need to put semicolons at the end of each line. So if I now save that, and this is my 3rd file, I'm going to call it code.js. Again, that was something that I named in the web page here, code.js. Got that one, it's there. And also I've got my style sheet, and that's there. So that's my first line. Let's move on, and I need another variable, and this time I'm going to call it C, and it's going to be the canvas, and I'm going to get what we call a context, because it needs to know what you want to draw, and sometimes we can draw in 3 dimensions, and for this we really want to draw in 2 dimensions, so I'm going to say 2D in quote marks. So really that's just setting myself up with a toolbox of 2-dimensional drawing tools such as rectangles and circles and lines. So next thing I'm going to do is make my particle. So function particle. Now this must start with a capital P, and I'm going to pass it some variables. I need to know a position on the screen, so I need an X and Y position. I need to know how wide it is. Think of it as a circle, and a circle has a radius. That's going to help me draw it on the screen. And also I want a colour for the actual particle. Then I'm going to open some curly braces, and then I'm going to start setting the ball up. This is the ball, this is the particle, and the particle has the X value, so this X equals X. So each particle's got an X coordinate, and we are passing the X coordinate into it from here. That's as much as I'm going to say. And this dot Y equals Y. So generally what we're going to do is we're going to take each one of these, X, Y, radius and colour, and have a this, just meaning this particle. And that is going to be important when we have about 400 particles on the screen. It needs to know which one this is. So that's why we're using this. So this dot radius equals radius, and this dot colour equals colour. So that's set up the X and Y values where it is on the screen, the radius and the colour. Later on we'll be adding more things to this, such as vectors for velocity and all sorts of things. So what we need to do now is two things. We need two functions. And the first function we need is called the draw function. This .draw is a function, and we use round brackets followed by curly brackets, and inside here I'm going to be writing my code to draw the particle or the ball on the screen. I also need, because I'm going to be animating it, I need to update it every millisecond or so. So it's going to move across the screen, so I'm going to update its position on the screen. So I'm going to have another function for that. Again, open the round brackets followed by the curly braces, and so I've just left them there. I'm going to actually fill them out with code now. So how am I going to draw? I'm going to use this variable, which is my canvas. So I've just used a C to represent the canvas. So everything I'm doing here is going to be prefixed with C. C dot, that means the canvas. Begin a path, that means put the pen down onto the paper. And we're going to draw. Now a circle is an arc. I'm not going into why here. There's plenty of things that I do which explain this arc. But it takes some values, and what it's going to do, if I draw a full arc of 360 degrees, I will get a circle. So I need to know its x position, so this x, that is for this particle, remember there could be 400, and I need to know its y position, this y, and I need to know its radius, so it can draw the circle. Now I need to give it the degrees. So we start off at 0 degrees, and you might think that we go to 360. You would be correct. However, we use a different kind of maths called radians, and you've heard of the value pi. We're going to use that, and we're going to multiply it by 2 pi. And if you think about 2 pi, we're looking at describing the circumference of a circle. So it's 2 times, there is a math library, make sure you use a capital M for math, then dot and capital P, capital I for pi. And finally we put false in. So I can either have true or false. If I choose true, it will draw it in a clockwise direction. If I choose false, it will draw it in an anti-clockwise direction. So that is drawing a circle. Now what I really want to do is sort of have a colour in the circle. So on the canvas, use the canvas tool, which is called fill style. Again, watch for the capitals. I'm going to say that equals this dot colour. Okay, again 400 particles on the screen. I might have 400 different colours, and this particle needs this colour. So I've set the colour. All I need to do now is fill the colour in. So I can say c.fill, and that colours the circle. And finally what I'm going to do is lift my pen up off the paper using close path. Okay, so that draws a circle. Now I'm going to go into my update function, and this is probably where we'll spend most of our time coding. Particularly later on, but at the moment we're going to do something really simple. We're going to just make the ball fall downwards on the screen. So to do that I need to change its y value. So this dot y is equal to this dot y plus 1. Now there's some strange notation there. Actually I'm going to write it out properly so you can see it. And then I'll put the shorthand notation back. So really what I'm doing here is this. So this dot y equals this dot y plus 1. I don't need to write it like that. I can just use some shorthand notation. So I'm going to take that out, and I'm going to put the plus sign before the equal sign, and that is the same as I've just written. It's just shorthand notation on a computer. Works with many languages including Python. So that makes the y value change. Now on a computer, 0 is at the top and the biggest number is at the bottom. Let's say 900 is down here. That's opposite to the way that you see Y values on a graph, where the bigger number is at the top and the smaller number is at the bottom. Computers are a bit upside down. You'll get used to that. And once I've changed its position, all I need to do then is draw it. So I'm calling this dot draw. So changing the Y value, adding 1 to it, and then drawing it again. If you want to experiment, you can change this value here, make it bigger, and you'll speed it up, or make it smaller and you'll slow it down. We're almost finished our first go. What I need is sort of, whoops, I don't need to do that, that's for sure. So outside the particle, okay, make sure you're outside the particle. If you click on the braces, you can see where they are. That starts the particle, that ends it. I'm now outside of it. I need another function to set up or initialize my ball. So I'm going to say function init for initialize. I'm just lazy, I don't want to type out the word initialize. Open and close round brackets, parenthesis, and then open and close, let me just stretch that so you can see it, the curly braces. And in here I'm just going to say that my first particle, P1, is equal to a new particle. So every time I want a particle, I just say I want a new particle and then give it some values. And in this one I'm going to say I want it on the screen at, let's say, 100 pixels across, 150 pixels down the screen. It's going to be size 20 and it's going to be coloured red. So that's a particle. I'm going to do another quick one. Particle 2, whoops, is a new, or you could just copy and paste that, a new particle. Let's say I wanted 150 pixels across, 80 down. I want it very, very small, so let's call it 5, a radius of 5, and let's make it blue. So that would be 2 particles. I only want to draw 1 at the moment, so I'm going to comment that one out. So 2 forward slashes before it turns it green. That is a comment. So I will uncomment that later, and you can add particles or play around with particles as much as you like. So that's setting it up. That's starting it off. A bit later on we might put that in a different place. Now I want to do my animation, so I need another function which is just called animate. And again, open and close the parenthesis, and then have an open and close curly braces. And in here I'm going to request from JavaScript an animation frame. This is like a slide in PowerPoint. So each frame is like a slide, and we can have lots of slides. And once I've got one, I'm going to again say it's to animate. Now this is going to loop round, loop, 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 and that is going to be my animation. And the way I'm going to animate is whatever's on the screen, whatever's on my slide, for example, I'm going to erase. So the canvas, the C dot, the same that we did up here with the draw function, canvas dot clear a rectangle. Okay, that's the whole screen hopefully, from 0 x 0 y, so that's the top left hand corner, to the canvas width, which I'll come to shortly. So that's the width of the canvas, and the canvas dot height. And I'm going to set these values in a second. But we're looking at this canvas here. You can see it all in green. I set the canvas up there to be whatever was on the web page, and every time I need to talk to the actual canvas, I use the word canvas. You can see down here in green, and I'm saying set the width, set the height. But I need to set that initially. So outside of this animation function, and that's our animation finished with. Oh, no, it's not. I've just got one more thing. I need to take the particle1 and I need to call its update function. So p1.update. So this is saying particle1, which is this particle here. I'm calling its update function. So this is what's going to make the y increase, and then it's going to draw on the screen. So as I said, last couple of pieces, we finished in about 4 lines. I'm going to set the canvas dot width, and actually I'm going to put a comment here because this is where my program begins. Main program. All of these up here start with the word var, meaning setting a variable, or the word function. Okay, and so when JavaScript starts, like it works the same in Python, it looks at this and says, oh, that's var, skip over, skip over, skip over, skip over, skip over, skip over, and the first line of code that doesn't begin with var or function is my start of my program. So actually this is the first line of my program. So I'm saying that the canvas width is the inner width. Now inner width has turned brown. That is the browser. It's finding out what the size of the browser window is, and I can say the same for the height. The canvas dot height, so setting the canvas height to be equal to the inner height. So that sets up the canvas size. That's my drawing rectangle on the screen. The only thing I need to do now is run my program. So the first thing I do is initialize it. So this is calling this one, saying give me a particle. And then when I've got the particle, I call this function animate, which keeps animating the particle. So that calls this function, and this calls this function over and over and over and over and over again. It doesn't stop, it just keeps looping. That's my program. You see it's red, so I'm going to save it. Last thing I'm going to choose to do is hopefully not make any errors. Launch it in Chrome. And yep, I got myself a nice little error there. Ah, silly me. That's not what I launch in Chrome. Let's go back to this. We need to launch the web page in Chrome. Ah, beginner. I need to learn how to do this. Launch that in Chrome. There we go. And we have our ball dropping. And it's dropping constantly, a little bit slowly. But I'm sure you can change things with that. I've certainly mentioned things in the video that you can change. Maybe you want to have a look and change a few things yourself. And if you press the reload, because it's going to go off the screen at the bottom, we're going to stop that later. It's certainly going to go a lot faster and go off the screen. In fact, let's just make it go faster to show you that you can do it. So I'm going back to the code. This was the place where we're changing it. Let me change that to 10 instead of 1. Save it, refresh the page, and the ball falls quicker. Okay, so there you go. There's your first program to draw a ball on the screen and make it move.